begin as always with our profession of faith. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, now this session 4 is going to kind of really condense now everything that we've talked about in the first 3 sessions. So this is kind of what I would call, say, a summary of everything that we've talked about. So this is really the document that you would really, if you're going to refer to it, I refer to this one and not the first 3. The first 3 kind of just leads up to 4. Right? And this, again, comes from Gravissimum Educationis, that is the Declaration on Christian Education. And this is the church speaking, okay? So the Declaration states, since parents have given children their life, okay, and that means their life, that means a kid, I'm going to emphasize, the baby comes out with the innate right to be educated. Okay. The parent has duties and obligations, and that's where their rights come from, is out of their duties and obligation. But the child has the primary right. Okay. The relationship of the parent's rights flow from the child, not independent of themselves. So we want to be clear about that. Okay, so we always start with the person, and we always end up with the person. So the baby, okay, has the initial, fundamental, inherent right to be educated, to be instructed and trained. Because of that, then the parents have the duties and obligation to instruct and train the child. So the parents' rights come from their obligations and duties. The child's rights come from just the fact that he's a human being. So I want you to be clear on that, right? Parents don't have, in that sense, rights, meaning by nature, even though they gave life to the child. The child has the rights. Because of that right, the parents have duties and obligations, and from those duties, then that's where their rights come from. And if you follow this through, you'll see the logic and how that works out. Okay, so therefore the parents are bound by the most serious obligation to educate their offspring. And again mentioned, education is instruction and training. And therefore must be recognized as the primary and principal educators. I want to point out to this again, we're going to talk about it, make sure we get the principle. Therefore, every educational institution, okay, simply acts in loco parentis. They act in place of the parents, because the parents are the primary educators. The parents then turn over for a temporary moment of time to raise their children, teach their children, instruct their children for this particular reason or that particular reason. Okay, there's this modern notion, okay, that the educational institutions have the rights, okay, and they will tell the parents what to do, and that's exactly backwards. It's exactly backwards. The parents have the rights, and the parents have the right, okay, to ensure what kind of education their child receives. It's from the church now. This role in education, that is the parents, is so important that only with difficulty can it be supplied where it is lacking. Okay, I don't care what the institution is, it cannot replace the parent. Okay, in their primary ability, in power and right. Parents are the ones who must create a family atmosphere. That's the first school, is in the home. That's the first school that the kid attends, is in the home. And they must create an atmosphere animated, by love. And it's animated by love, okay, because of the vocation of love. The child is called to love and to be loved. So he has to live in an atmosphere of love, okay, whereby that he can grow in that vocation. And also where he will learn a respect for God and for man, in which the well-rounded personal and social education of children is fostered. So that's where that is fostered. They first learn how to act socially, it's in the home. They first learn how personally in the home, in the family atmosphere. And that's one of the reasons why so many kids are out of kilter today, because they don't have the family atmosphere, and if they do, it's not a complete family atmosphere that is single moms or whatever the case may be. Okay? So hence the family is the first school, The family is the first school of the social virtues. And that's what I mean, the domestic church. That's where it begins, in the home, in the family. That's why people should not be looking at, if we clean up the educational institutions, stuff like that. That's not where it's at. You've got to clean up the home. You've got to have a family, or there's no balance. It is particularly in the Christian family. So what I just mentioned before, that's natural. That's in any family. That's not Christian, because of the nature of the child. Okay? The child is meant to love and to be loved by nature. That's not Christian. It's natural. And it is particularly in the Christian family, enriched by the grace and office of the sacrament of matrimony. I mentioned this a number of times to you. In the sacrament of matrimony, a particular man and a particular woman are joined together in the marital covenant. The graces from that sacrament apply then to that particular man and that particular woman. It's not generic grace. So when you enter into the sacrament of matrimony, the graces that attend that sacrament, okay, are applied to this particular man and this particular woman and the children that therefore come after that. Okay, so you've got to always remember, in the Christian home, you have grace working for you in the sacrament of matrimony. Okay, so that's why it's so important that you get the natural, because grace builds upon nature. If you have the human element intact, the graces from the sacrament of matrimony are going to work, because they have something to work on. Okay, so don't forget that sacrament of matrimony that you have received. Okay, yes, you have to go to confession, and yes, you have to receive the Eucharist, blah, blah, blah. But you have a sacrament working for you in the marital state, and don't ever forget that. Okay. Okay, in that the children should be taught from their very early years, not wait until they're in teenage years, from the very early years, from the day they come out of that womb, to have a knowledge of God according to the baptismal faith. Now remember that faith is a gift. You receive the faith, the child received the faith, okay, at baptism, okay. Now that faith just has to be nurtured. He already has the faith. That's a gift given by the church. That has to be nurtured and developed, okay. So you're not kind of, again, that whole notion I'm pouring stuff into the kid, okay, that modern notion of education, okay. No, they have to get the faith and you nurture that. You nurture that, okay. And again, by prayer, by the atmosphere that's in the house, okay. And that's according to the faith received in baptism. Okay? And also to worship him and to love their neighbor. Right? Where do they learn love their neighbor? One, how the parents act with one another. And then number two, how they act with brothers and sisters with one another. That's what that school is. That's where you learn that. And if that's learned correctly, they'll have no problem loving their neighbor in the outside of the house. Here, that is in the family, they find their first experience of a wholesome human society. In the family is where they find that. In the family, that's where they experience it. And of the church. So there you have the human and the baptismal, or the human and the Christian. It's an integrated life. You cannot try to raise them in the faith and not develop them from a human point of view, or vice versa, raise them and they don't know anything about the faith. I would say those kind of imbalances is when they get up to 15, 18, I don't want to go to church, I don't want anything more to do with this, because it's not real. It's not really in that family that they've lived in for 12 or 13, 14, 15 years. Okay. So it's kind of like the air that you breathe. Finally, it's through the family that they are led to, gradually they, the children, the offspring, are led to companionship with their fellow man and with the people of God. Okay? So it'd be no big deal if you're going out shopping or you're going to church or everything. There's a whole sense of this fellowship among men. They know that because they've lived this now. They've lived this in the home. You don't learn it outside, you learn it at the home. And again, she who rocks the cradle rules the world. And that is not an abstract, ideological, nice little phrase. That's a reality. Let parents then recognize and never forget the inestimable importance of a truly Christian family, both human and Christian or baptismal, has for the life and progress of God's own people, that is of the church. You're building up the church. You're building up society. Without you, there is no church in that sense. The family, which has the primary duty, now you see it's a family, it's a whole education, it's a whole school of education. Primary duty of imparting education, and again, education is instruction and training. Instruction and training. Needs the help of the whole community. In addition, therefore, the rights of parents and others in loco parentis, others, whoever are helping the parents right? Whether it's at a school or grandmother's babysitting or neighbors, whoever, okay? It's fundamentally the parents, okay? And trust a share of their work and education. Certain rights and duties belong indeed to civil society. So again, civil society has their rights and duties because of their obligations. Just as for the parents have obligations. But it goes up the ladder, okay? The child has the innate right to an education. Parents, because they have duties and obligations, okay, have certain rights. And to those people that the parents turn over education of their children, now they have certain duties and obligations and rights. So it goes up from the bottom, right? Okay, its function, society's function, is to promote the education of youth in many ways. That's fundamental to society. And that's why this country, because it's abandoned kind of its sense of real good education, okay, that has a long-term effects in society, okay. I mean, you have people who can't count, can't speak, are lazy, none of the social virtues, okay. That is a profound effect, okay. Okay, now you want to protect the duties and rights of parents. So the first obligation and duty, okay, of society is to protect the rights of parents. That's the first duty. And the others who share in the education, and to give them aid according to the principle of subsidiarity. And the principle of subsidiarity means that you resolve your differences at the lowest possible level. Okay, that's one of the mistakes. The principle of subsidiarity is being violated today because you're going to put it up at the top of the federal government and they'll resolve the problems. That's a violation of the principle of subsidiarity. Okay, and it has nothing to do with who's in the government or anything else like. You don't start at the top to go to the bottom. You start at the bottom and go to the top. Okay, so if there's any kind of differences between parents and, say, your local school or whatever thing, you resolve that at the lowest possible level. You don't go right up to the Department of Education, or you don't go to the bishop right away. You have to resolve the lowest possible level. In the society or the bureaucrat or the church, they cannot violate that principle of subsidiarity because it's a violation then of your primary rights as parents. Okay, number two, according to the principle, and when the endeavors of parents and other societies are lacking to carry out the work of education in accordance to the wishes of the parents, and moreover, as the common good demands, that is, to build schools and institutions of learning. So that's their duties, that's their primary obligations to do that, so they can make it easier for the parents to exercise their primary duties and obligations. And all of those flow initially from the child. All of this flows from that child in his rights or her rights. Finally, in a special way, the duty of educating belongs to the church. Okay, Mother Church, magisterium, teacher, right? And it comes from go therefore, teach ye all nations. Right? So the church is primarily a teacher. She's a mother who teaches. Not merely because she must be recognized as a human scientist capable of education, but especially because she has the responsibility of announcing the way of salvation to all men and of communicating the life of Christ to those who believe. And communicating the life of Christ means the liturgy, the sacraments, and prayer. So that's why liturgy, sacraments, and prayer are an essential part of the child's Christian education, because it's the church now that is giving this to the child. And again, to yourselves. So again, you receive that sacrament of matrimony from the church. You bring the child, the priest says, what do you want to do? We want the faith. So you go to the church and you get these things. You want to grow in holiness, you want to be a good parent, you have to have a prayer life. You have to have a sacramental life. You have to have a liturgical life. Okay? Next week we begin Lent. Lent should be part of that atmosphere in the home. Not simply, well, I'm going to give a peanut jelly and you give up this. No, there has to be an atmosphere. So they experience, okay, the Lenten season as a church. That is the domestic church. Then that makes sense when you go to church and when they have Lent in the church. Now, okay, it clicks. And in her unfailing solicitude of assisting men to be able to come to the fullness of this life. The church is bound as a mother. That's what it is, Holy Mother Church. Okay. Why is that? Why do they call the church the mother? The mother is the first teacher. The mother is the primary teacher. The church is a mother to give these children of hers an education by which their whole life can be imbued with the Spirit of Christ, and at the same time do all she can to promote for all peoples the complete perfection, okay, of the human person. And a complete perfection is they grow humanly and they grow in the life of faith. So the baptismal / human, it's one integrated human being. And they have to grow in both that life, human and Christian. And it's the Mother Church that makes that union between the human and baptismal possible because of all her great gifts in liturgy, sacraments, and prayer. Because we all know we have suffered from the effects of original sin. And we've mentioned this before. You don't teach a kid no. They know how to say no. Okay? So your whole point of forming the children, okay? But again, the sacrament of matrimony and baptismal is not enough. That's why you got to have the Eucharist and the penance and all these other things that strengthen the child, but also strengthen that family atmosphere, okay? Which always is threatened by sin because of selfishness, fighting, arguing, etc. Parents who have the primary and inalienable right and duty. Okay. Again, the church keeps emphasizing this about the parent. And you notice she's not talking about Catholic schools, Catholic universities, or anything else like that. She is talking about the source, the foundation, the basis, okay, of all education, okay, is the parents. Because they have the primary duty and obligation bringing that child into this world by cooperating with God, okay? They now see that child with its innate rights, and out of them now comes your sense of duty and obligation. And women have a better sense of that all the time, okay? Women do, because they have an initial relationship with that child, okay? Okay, well, I can't do dope because the kid's in the, you know what I mean? Even, you know, well, you know what I'm talking about. To educate children must enjoy the liberty. They must enjoy the liberty. Parents must enjoy the liberty of their choice of schools. Of their choice of school. Consequently, the public power of society, which has the obligation and duty to affect the rights of the citizens, okay, again, their rights come from the rights of citizens. Okay? Their rights come from you having your rights. They're there to help you, not run you. Must see to it in its concern for distributive justice that public subsidies are paid out in such a way that parents are truly free, to choose according to their conscience. This is not Christian now. This is natural. We have a conscience by nature. According to their conscience, the schools they want for their children. That's a fundamental right that you have as parents. And they have to make that policy. You see where charter schools now are starting to show up and stuff like that. I mean, that's just, you know, they're throwing you a crumb. You should have to, if you want to go over to Memorial High School and you live to the west side, you should be able to do that. When you have your homeschooling in the certain areas that you want to send the kid to school for to pick up this or that, even if it's just to play basketball, they have a right. You have a right to have that, and they cannot refuse you. That's an innate, inalienable right that you have. That comes from nature, not the church. You're not doing this because you're Catholic, Christian, Protestant, Buddhist. It's in your very nature because of the kid who has that right. In addition, it's the task of the state to see to it that all citizens are able to come to a suitable share in culture and are properly prepared to exercise their civic duties and rights. Therefore, the state must, 1, protect the right of children. That's the fundamental one. Protect the right of the children to an adequate school education. Number 2, check the ability of the teachers, in the level of the education. Try and tell that to the NEA. In the excellence of their training. Oh, yeah, well, I went to golf school down in Florida, and I'm now going to teach physics in junior year in high school. Right. And then 3, look after the health of the pupils, in general promote the whole school project. But it must be always kept in mind, and it must never be forgotten, the principle of subsidiarity. Here it applies. The first right, okay, is in the child, and therefore the parents are next. They cannot violate the principle of subsidiarity, so that there is no kind of school monopoly. So you take the city of Manchester, there's a monopoly. You got to go here, you got to go there, you want to take this, you can't take that, and blah, blah, blah. Right? That's a violation of parental rights. That's a violation of parental rights, just so you know that. I'm not as you go out and protest and blow up the public school system. I'm not just saying it, but I just want you to be clear, okay, that your rights are being violated when you cannot have your kid go to the school that you want them to go to. Even it means going to Central on Monday, West on Tuesdays, and Memorial thing, and Trinity on Friday. So that there is no kind of school monopoly, for this is opposed to the native rights of the human person, the child. You begin with the child, you end with the child. It's a violation. I'm not saying this is the church saying this. I'm reading for church documents so we make sure that I'm not nuts. Well, there he goes again, blah, blah, blah. This ain't me. I'm just giving a little bit of emphasis to the written word. Opposed to the native rights of the human person. To the development and spread of culture, to the peaceful association of citizens, and to the pluralism that exists today in ever so many societies. Therefore, this sacred synod, Vatican Council II, exhorts the faithful. Now he's talking to the baptized. I mean, the Council Fathers are talking to the baptized. He's talking to you and me. Therefore, the faithful to assist their utmost in finding suitable methods of education programs to study, informing teachers who can give youth a true education. And through the associations of parents in particular, they should further with their assistance, all the work of the school, but especially the moral education it must impart. Because man is a moral being by nature. That has nothing to do with Christianity. Moral education should permeate every aspect of a school, not only in the classroom, but in the whole atmosphere, the way it's lived. You see these young chippies walking around. First of all, they leave the house dressed like that, and then they go to the school and they see them dressed like that. Immodesty is part of moral education. Okay. So I have just a couple of comments here that I want to just keep repeating here, okay, to make sure you get it. Okay, so education, we're talking about the early years now. Talking about the early years, right, say 1 to 7, okay, or 0 to 7, right? Education is 90% repetition. How many times have I told you not to do that? I know. Well, stop doing it. Okay. And turns around and do it. Excuse me. Did you? How many times? I've told you 52,000 times. It has not been 52,000 miles. You're exaggerating. It's only been 3, 10, 12. Hold your fork in your hand. Put it on the dish. Okay. Yes, I know peas are difficult, but you're going to have to start learning how to do peas on the fork. Okay, so instruction and then training. Okay, instruction is rational living. Okay, that is you're appealing to the rational element of the child. And there are 3 there, and I've mentioned this, and I'm going to keep mentioning it because most people, all they concentrate is on the intellect or the mind. Okay, but there is memory and imagination. And those are, in one sense, they're more important, memory and imagination, in the early years than in intellect is, because their mind is not developed that well. But the memory and the imagination, they know that just like that. And you know that, I've told you this. You read the story, they know when to turn the page. They can't read anything, but they know when that stops and the story starts over here. Read it again and again and again. You have to take turns reading the story because they want to keep hearing it, hearing it, hearing it. Right? That's memory at work, and the stories because imagination is working. And those precede, okay, the rational. Right? So again, you memorize your numbers, your letters, your writing. Okay, you give imagination in terms of stories. Then training is habituation. Okay, it's forming good habits. That's all it is in the moral and social virtues. It's forming good habits. The one thing that you cannot tolerate from the very early, okay, is to make sure the kid is in line. Because then you can't trust. You have to point out that lying is the worst sin in the world. You're better off committing murder, okay, than lying at that early age. Once they learn that conscience is formed to always tell the truth, then you can have a happy household because everyone trusts one another, everyone knows speaking the truth. Without that trust, it ain't going to happen. Now, the thing is that while you're training, that's like training a dog, Well, there are some animals that are not disposed to being trained. That's why they stay in the wild and they got to keep them in cages, okay? The human being is disposed, okay, to be habituated, because that then frees him or her to act in other areas. That's why the importance in the early years of forming good habits, because ultimately then they're going to be free to do other things, okay? You can't have a 12-year-old kid wearing diapers. At some point, they're going to be totally trained, and the earlier the better. Okay? The same thing with speaking. No, enunciate your words. Say yes, say no. Oh, yeah. Well, you don't understand. This is what he's saying. You don't expect to translate. That the kids should speak clearly so everyone can understand them, not just the parent who's translating and probably guessing. Sorry. And that's for the sake of personal freedom. So they will be free. Then there's baptismal disposition to be habituated for the sake of personal holiness. And again, the faith disposes the kid to have this, be habituated, okay? To learn how to pray, to how to attend Mass, okay? And then cement the foundation of the first 7 years of a child's life so that when the storms of growth and development come in the teeny bopper years, okay, the tree bends, but it doesn't break. So the here and there, but boy, that root that's in that cement container, and it won't break. It'll bend, so that ultimately you get out of the teenage years, whatever their difficulties are and not difficulties, pretty soon, 21, 22, they settle right in. They're back home as a child, but now they're grown up. And they're able to be grown up because you started at an early age so they could grow up. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.